if any of you have watched the news, you know that a lot of times you hear things like, we've made progress on this issue or that. But if you've noticed, they never say what the progress is or what they've made it towards. It's always very general. And I've always wondered, what does that even mean, progress? Progress towards what? From what? These are important questions. And there's a good quote by LEC that says, is it progress if a cannibal uses knife and fork? And the answer is no. And I agree with this quote, but with reservations. The reason I am going to give 3 examples of why I agree. And 1 or 2 examples of why I agree and 1 of why I don't. An example of why I agree is the stimulus package that was passed in Congress in 2009. They made progress, they said. They had to pass something to save the economy, but they didn't care what they passed. They kind of just threw money at the wall to see what would stick. They didn't care what was in it. And although it was progress, it was unimportant, and it didn't really have as much effect as it could if they really targeted the spending that was in it to specific things that could have helped. This is where it is important what you do, as opposed to just making bland progress with no goal in mind. Another example, which is more personal, is when you're doing homework. Say you're writing an essay. You sit down to write, and you sit there for hours just kind of staring at a blank page. And eventually you have to write something. You think once you write anything, you've made progress. But it's important that you write something that actually relates to your topic. And this is another example of why it's important that your progress is actually of quality and not just bland progress, bland quantity, bland words on a page. But it is important that you don't let this hinder you. And an example of that is in Congress right now, spending is out of control. We have a national debt that's $14 trillion, and it's going up. And we have consistent budget deficits that are in no sight of going down. Many people would say that if you cut spending, you cause problems, and they don't want to act on it. They don't want to make any progress at all because there could be problems. This is an example of when it is important to make progress, at all. But not doing anything is a lot more devastating than doing something. So as I've shown with my examples of the stimulus package, doing homework, and spending in Congress, it is important that your progress is targeted and that it is quality, but it is also important that you still do something and don't let it hinder you. That is why I agree with the quote that, with reservations that, or the implication of the quote, that it is not progress if a cannibal uses a knife and fork. Thank you.
No, don't give them back to me. You always keep the topics because I don't need them. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Wesley, I thought you did a very nice job. I like the opening that you had, connecting it to contemporary, speakers talking about those kinds of issues. Your point of view was very clear. You had a pretty good thesis. You do pick up that piece of paper and then start waving it around, and you didn't need it because you don't really refer to it. So you want to try and avoid having those sorts of things. It's just a crutch, and I know you kind of feel better because it's in your hand, but you don't need it, and it is a distraction. So I'll lose that. I thought you had good development on your first point. Excellent audience contact throughout the speech. You've got a very good vocal projection, and there's pretty solid variety in your voice. You had a solid exit line, so the presentation issues were pretty solid. Good. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Let's see.